what helps in clutter clearing is, where am I going? Who am I now? Who am I becoming? And does this person who I am now, or who I want to be, do they need that?
Before we dive into this week's episode, let's talk about a brand we both genuinely love, Cytoplan. You've probably heard us mention them before, and that's because their supplements are next level.
Yes, Cytoplan has been part of my routine for a while now. They just get it when it comes to health. Their whole approach is rooted in science and totally in tune with nature.
Exactly. Their formulas are bioeffective, which basically means the nutrients are in forms your body actually recognizes and uses properly and at the appropriate levels. Cytoplan is used and trusted by health practitioners across the country. Their formulas are developed by nutritional therapists and backed by over 3 decades of clinical insight. You really can feel the quality when you take them.
Plus, it's not just about what's in the bottle, it's the mission behind it too. Cytoplan is 100% owned by a charitable foundation, which means everything they do is about helping people live well for longer. It's not about trends or quick fixes, it's about real, lasting health.
That is so wonderful to know. And whether it's our energy, perimenopause, menopause itself, sleep, immunity, or just staying on top of your health, they've got you covered. You can also get a free health questionnaire and a consultation by ringing the helpline.
So if you're ready to take ownership of your health, check out Cytoplan, powered by nature, proven by science, and rooted in purpose. We'll pop the link and an exclusive 15% discount code in the show notes. Hello, I'm Karen Mellers.
Hello there, I'm Dr. Rosy Daniel.
You've just tuned in to Alive and Loving It, and we're here to help you bring joy and energy back to your life. Our first guest for 2026 is the wonderful Gina Lazenby, and she has got so much energy. I hope you enjoy this episode and feel that from her. She's so alive and she's loving it. Her interest in the relationship between well-being and our living environments began in the early 1990s, leading her to co-found the Feng Shui Society in 1993 and help establish the world's first professional Feng Shui training program. She is the author of 3 best-selling books, including The Healthy Home, the Feng Shui House book, which have introduced thousands to the power of the home and as a source of nourishment, balance and vitality. Gina is also the creator of the Healthy Home Retreat in the Yorkshire Dales, a beautiful place, curated non-toxic sanctuary, available for group stays, workshops and restorative breaks. And alongside this, she hosts and co-leads Conscious Cafe, an international community dedicated to meaningful conversations, self-awareness and conscious living. I had the great pleasure of meeting and spending time with Gina when I lived at Broughton Hall in February 2024 and learnt so much from her. So enjoy. Hello, lovely one. Thank you for joining us again on the Alive and Loving It podcast. This is our second episode in season 3. I can't believe we've made it to season 3, 2026, and we are focusing on the health creation principle, my space, and the impact on our health. And we couldn't have a better guest for you today. Hello, Gina Lazenby. So lovely to see you again and be having this conversation.
Great. It's lovely to be here and I love what you do, and isn't it wonderful to be alive?
Yeah, absolutely, love. Rosy, how are you today?
Oh, thrilled to be here. So happy, feeling so blessed to have you with us, Gina. You know, we could not have a better guest for this episode.
So, Gina, it's lovely to be having this conversation with you, and we can't wait to hear everything you've got to share with us. about how to organize your home and how to make sure that you can be your healthiest in your home. But where did all this start for you?
Well, it's a good question, actually, because, here we are, the 21st century. In about 92, I'd been unwell for quite some time. I'd been working with a natural health practitioner. And finally, as I wasn't making the progress that she thought I should make, she said, maybe your home or your office is having an effect. And I thought, what a crazy idea. The idea that a building somewhere that's separate from me could actually have an impact on me. And so I dismissed it, but it wasn't long after that the universe brought messages to me, and I kind of fell into the opportunity to go to a Feng Shui talk and weekend in London, Community Health Foundation, Macrobiotic. And William Spear, who then became my teacher, mentor, he was teaching for the weekend, and I had one of those epiphanies. And if this works, oh my gosh, the world needs to know about it, really. And I booked him on a Monday morning to come to my office, vet it, come to my newly decorated, refurbished house. And he came in, and I got these beautiful black, like shark fin lights on my yellow wall just being installed. He said, well, they'll have to go. I'm like, oh my goodness me. He went around the house. And according to what I said was happening in my life, and this is a new beginning for me, having moved into this house, to make all the adjustments. And this natural health practitioner who said maybe the energy of your home might have an impact, she was referring to something called geopathic stress, which is like a negative energy that can be underneath a building or in a room and that can have an effect, and it's invisible. So, that began my journey into looking into what exactly I could do. And of course, when I got the positive feedback of making a change, feeling an effect, I then moved forward with it. And I was so excited that I ended up creating, I think it was the world's first professional training school. I traveled, there wasn't any place to learn at the time. So as I traveled and I found speakers, I brought them into the UK, and we created a course program and, set up a first generation of Feng Shui consultants. And since then, I wrote a book called The Feng Shui House Book, which came out. It was that's a color coffee table book, only really available on eBay now. But anyway, I did this book, and then I had the opportunity to move out of London into a house, little cottage in the hills in Yorkshire, and then actually put some principles into practice about building and creating a home and refurbishing. And that became the Healthy Home. And I wrote this book following that, The Healthy Home. And then that house became the Healthy Home Retreat, where I lived for, 20 years when I moved out. And I live now in this house in Skipton in Yorkshire. And again, as I move into any space, I'm just using practical principles to keep me well, or I'm aware of things. And so that's what I would say. It's really deeply understanding that you and your space are connected, that you're influencing it and it's influencing you. And if you just, it kind of work with it in a mindful, intuitive way, you can get an idea of what's working for you. But, there are modern problems that will come in, like electromagnetic fields. So it's a big subject, but it's within our, most of it is within our control in our homes if you have an awareness.
Well, I can absolutely connect with that, Gina, because I've had people, when I've been taking a history as a holistic doctor and saying, when did you get ill? Can you think about when you got ill? And sometimes people will have that aha moment and say, gosh, it's since I moved into a particular house or a particular village. So I think we have this subtle awareness, but we often don't name it. We don't voice it. We may, some part of our psyche is saying things aren't right. But what would be really great to know is what you feel are the ingredients of a healthy home. Where should we be starting to think about this?
I think, every time I say this is the most important, then something else comes to my mind. But, two key areas of a healthy home where you've got good feng shui and you've got flow. The two most important places are one where you sleep. You're going to spend a third of your life in a bed. So that place where you sleep. And secondly, where you create your food. You're creating your life force in that kitchen. So those are the two rooms. I think there's something that's changed recently is more and more people working from home. So before, you would have your home as a sacred space. You come, you'd leave the outside world behind, you'd come home, you'd open the door, you close it, and you go, I'm home. It's all quiet and sacred. But no, you arrive home, or you arrive back at home, somebody's working there or you're working there. So, balancing those energies of where you work. Some people have to work in their bedroom, so you've got to then put a line. It's no longer an office; it's now a bedroom. I'm stopping that activity. I'm going to change the energy in the space. And also, another key part of your home is your front door. It's like the mouth of chi. It's like breathing in. You're breathing in. Although you breathe through your nose, not your mouth, you're breathing in, you're taking in, air, oxygen, and that wants to be a good flow in. Same with the front door. You need good access. You don't want it to be blocked. Many a time, I've worked with people who tell me that, things aren't coming their way. They're not coming to them. And there's a whole series of things which we can talk about the front door and how it impacts people's lives. But, I flagged up the kitchen and the sleep. And what I would say about sleep is, metal beds aren't great. I have mattresses without metal springs because they're amplifying the electromagnetic fields. They're making them worse. So if you can have a bed without that, cotton, natural materials in bed so that, regulates your temperature better. I've started now actually opening my window at night, letting in the cold air and not having any central heating on. Whereas before I really like to be cozy. I just feel the difference in my sleep. It's very difficult for an individual to check the geopathic stress that might be in a house. I mean, you can learn to do it or you bring someone in. But if you have got these negative flows of energy coming in, which Rosy, if you've worked with people, geopathic stress is very much associated to, some chronic conditions as being part of the picture. You can get a professional in who will douse. They can do it at a distance and find out whether you've got that energy underpinning your own home, or it's a particular line going through your bed. I've worked with people where we've had lines crossing, and then that part of the body where they've crossed, that's where they have the problem. So geopathic stress, which has various signs, it really helps breed clutter. So a cluttered home is like a symptom of geopathic stress. So there's having and turning your Wi-Fi off at night, whatever you can to keep the electronics low and to keep that out your bedroom. So it's a calm space and then it's easy to sleep,
Well, you've said at least 3 or 4 things here that we probably need to stop and explain. So the concept of Feng Shui, can you possibly enlighten us as to what that is and how we recognize it?
It's really, it's wind, water, literal translation, and Feng Shui, the word comes from China, but it's universal energy. It's just the Chinese tradition has deeply embedded in the culture, although modern China is less connected to the old traditional classical Feng Shui. But every culture has a way of understanding that energy is moving, it's moving into your space, that you have a space which is yours. It's legally yours. It's your bedsit, it's your flat in a building, it's your physical home, whether it's detached or whatever. It's the garden. You legally own that space, or you're renting it, and that's yours, and that's your energy container. And then when you're unaware, you're dialoguing with it. But when you are aware, you can look around and go, okay, this is happening in my life. How is my home? What's the feedback? What's the energy flow? Do I feel stuck? I feel stuck. I look around, crikey, let me move that. Let me see if the space feels different. And there's all sorts of ways of reading the energy pattern of a space. There are areas that are to do with different aspects of life. It's a very deep study. But, one key area, our mind is very, we're visual and we work with metaphor. So what you see, your brain is interpreting. And so the image that you see when you wake up in the morning will have an effect on your mood. So, let it be a good one. You don't want to wake up and think, oh, I left my notebook with all my jobs to do next to my bed and all my unread books next to my bed. I wake up and I think, oh, I've got all this and I haven't done it. Positive images. And when you look around at the art in your home, I've done this with people and I've said, what's the history behind that painting? I don't like the painting. What's the history? And then they'll say, I just got it from a charity shop, or I just bought it. I thought I liked it. It has no meaning for me, or it has a special meaning, and it's their meaning. As an example, doing a Feng Shui consultation on a house with William Spear years ago, there was a picture of a ship at sea, wild sea, and the lady of the house said, I don't like that, when we asked about it. And it was in the extra bedroom study. And the man of the house said, freedom, different meaning for him, his picture in his space. So, it kind of speaks to a conflict if she doesn't understand that, it speaks to a conflict in the relationship. But things mean different things to different people. And I was looking recently at my own home and thinking, I'm moving into a new phase. What about the art? Shall I change it? And I ended up getting hold of, by chance, a picture that my grandfather had painted 55, 60 years ago. And he was an artist. He used to paint in the 30s the posters for the movies. He did the Gone with the Wind poster. And he did a painting of Venice, and a family friend gave it to me, and I put it on the wall in an area that has a connection with elders and history in the past. And for me, my interpretation is, got a picture of Venice in my Yorkshire home, but it speaks to his creativity. And that, I can pull that in as what am I drawing from my history, my ancestors? And I'm using that as a foundation for the future. So that's my representation to me. And that's what's important. It's the personal aspect of art, and that you do have images around you that have a meaning, that support you, that everything you look at or everything that's around you is some way feeding that energy. It's positive, as opposed to looking at it and thinking, that needs fixing. That's a reminder, and it takes your energy down. That's why good maintenance in a house is important. When something is broken, fix it. Otherwise, every time you look at it, your subconscious will say, that has to be fixed, that needs doing, that needs replacing. And it's an energy drain.
Oh, Gina, this is so, so rich. And I think there are many people out there like me until I met you last year that had no awareness of this at all. Just bumbling about in a cluttered space of things that were not in the right place, of objects that are around you that are subconsciously taking your energy to a certain place that might not be what you're choosing. So I can see how you can feel quite overwhelmed in a space if you don't have that awareness about it. I mean, I'm busily making notes because I've just moved into my new home, and I got rid of a load of stuff. When I left my family home 2 and a bit years ago, I did get rid of a lot that I thought, I don't need that anymore. I don't want that anymore. That doesn't mean anything to me. And now I've got this lovely empty space that I don't want to fill with too much clutter, because, I remember you saying something about what you look outwards from your home, and what you're seeing in the, outside of that affects you as well. Tell us a little bit about that, the vista.
Yeah, well, there was a time when I had a house in central London and a mews, which by its nature, London mews houses are small houses with a small little passageway or road behind the taller buildings. I suppose they used to be where we kept the horses. And so it's a small house. And when I looked out through the window bars, which are there for security, I didn't have a view. My view was up there. It was a slice of sky. And so I kind of accepted that. That was my view. And of course, there's the whole of London to go at. But when I was in California, and this happened a couple of times, I was sitting on a beach and got this eye, looking at the horizon, which was so far away, and got a sense of a long way into the future, that things were possible because my vision was so far away. And I felt inspired by it. And then I came home to my small house I felt like this. I didn't have that same view. So I thought, you know what, I need to move. I need to go somewhere where I've got a bigger view. And I ended up living on a hilltop in Yorkshire where I could see for miles. But that opened my inner landscape of possibility. You don't have to move house to do this, but so you're working at your desk in a small space. And in fact, I went to have a look at a business office space here in Skipton, and it was a desk looking at a wall. I thought, no, I'm never going to be inspired there. So if you can take your eyes away from what you're doing and find some way of looking. Now, this is a whole wall of wallpaper, which is a mural of a woodland walk, and I actually feel like I'm walking in the woods when I go past it. Equally, I could have had a picture of Mount Fuji if I wanted. But, if you have either a window with a view, or you can go out and have a walk, you can expand your sense of self the more you expose yourself to where the eye can move. So if you have a picture of a bowl of fruit, literally it lands on the fruit. There's nowhere else to go. But if it's a picture of a field with a passageway, with a walkway going off into the distance of the woods, like, wow, it's going somewhere. So that sense of self expands within if we can also expand our view externally in whatever way we can manage that.
Well, I think that's genius. I did have a girlfriend who lived in the middle of Bristol with houses all around, but she had wallpaper also of a forest. One whole wall was a forest. So you always had that sense of expansion. So it's genius.
It does work. It's like a trick to the brain. You just feel you're in something bigger. And it expands the sense of self, just having pictures of. So that's why it's important to look at pictures. And also this new trend of it being affordable to get a whole wall of wallpaper, which is, rather than me put bookshelves here, I've got this whole wall of a morning walk in the forest with the sunlight coming in. It affects my physiology when I see it. I feel like I'm going outside without going outside. And, there's research to show that, people who visualize muscle activity can have as much effect on their body as people who actually go out and do that walking or exercise. And we have such a powerful way of working with our bodies if we think about it, if we know about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So just rolling back to, because there's so many themes popping up here. The question of geopathic stress. So my understanding is that this is not a spooky thing, nor particularly a spiritual thing. It's to do with rock plates under the ground. So like cliffs or tectonic plates, and where energy currents start to flow because of rock formations under the ground or because of flowing water under the ground. So they're not necessarily sort of bad or in any way unnatural. They're energy currents that are there in the ground. Have I got that right, Gina?
Well, there's a movement of energy, just like there are kind of arteries, veins, and capillaries in the body. There's a movement of energy inside the earth. And our ancestors knew about this because there were places where they built stone circles or churches or altars, because they're like power lines that they were able to intuit or find under the ground. And everybody's seen, somebody with one of those water divining sticks and finding water flow. So there is an energy flow under the ground, good and bad, and positive places and less positive places. Now, in the past, when you were like siting a house, you put it on the top of a hill, it's going to be very windy. You put it down in the valley, you risk being flooded. There'd be a place that's ideal, that's protected from the wind, that has a lovely view of the right direction that you want. The water is below you, you've got water accessible. So these are ideal locations. And then you'd look around the fields, and in past times there would be all the cattle would graze here, but no animals would graze there. There would be a way of determining by the things growing whether it was stunted or in a strange shape, to show that just at that place was not a good place to site your home. Let's site it over here. Everything's growing, it's all straight, it's all nice, animals love it. But with pressure on space, we don't, there's an apartment or a flat here. You don't have that luxury of choosing your ideal location. So then maybe you're building on places where there is too much, discordant energies, a water flow here, water flow there, and it's creating a vibe. You can call it negative if you like, geopathic stress, the word stress, geo, earth, pathic, harmful. And it can be under a building and cause an effect. And you can see sometimes buildings where they need painting, there's a lot of clutter, they're not great. And so, really for a beginner, if one feels that there is an issue, then calling someone in or having someone douse it from a distance. There are little machines you can get which send out a field and mask the energy and send out a nice feel little Helios machine. So there are sort of modern ways of changing this if it is quite abundant. There's too much of that geopathic stress, but it does exist, and it can be under a home, and it does have an effect.
And so dowsers can help to tell you move the direction of your bed, or you're saying they can even help redirect that energy flow.
Clear it, right? Because, I mean, how many houses can you move a bed to another location? You've got plugs here, window there, wardrobe, and the bedside tables, and the door. There's very little. It's not like optimum bed. It's not like we can move our little pallet. You have to work with what is. So clearing it is the way. It's energy, so it's moved with energy. That's the skill of doing energy clearing rather than suffering it or moving your bed over here.
I think, the 2-year journey that I've done and living in Airbnbs, I've become sensitive to a place. So I think the more that I've moved, the more I've walked into a space and thought, oh, this feels lovely. Or I've walked into it and thought, oh no, there was one that just felt like a tomb, Gina. As soon as I went in, it was cold, it was damp. There were hardly any soft furnishings. In fact, the very next day I went to the range and took a big trolley and filled it with cushions and soft furnishings just to try and make it feel better. So I think with moving so often, I've really become sensitive. And the last place I stayed in, I couldn't sleep. And I was getting neck ache and shoulder ache, and I started getting inflammation in my joints. And it was only when I moved away, I didn't sleep in the bed for the last 2 weeks because I thought, what is it that's causing this? I moved and I slept on the floor where I was more grounded. All the aches and pains went away. I'm really appreciative now of that sensitivity being awakened in me and the awareness now that it can make such a difference to your health. I mean, what sort of things are we looking at, Rosy, what sort of symptoms can people be?
Well, I can answer that question on 2 different levels. I remember we did a health creation at work consultancy for a firm in Derbyshire, and about 70 staff. And what was very interesting was that people were reporting back, because there is a part of the questionnaire about my space and its impact on me. And there were some people in the firm who were saying, actually, this space doesn't feel great. And in fact, there's quite a bit of conflict in this department. Whereas other people were saying, actually, the space feels great and fine, and we have a good repartee going on between the staff. And so what in this very enlightened company they did was to bring in an energy healing group to change that. And guess what? The productivity changed, the relationships changed. That they had thought that the problem was to do with 2 or 3 different characters, but something about the energy of the space was creating disharmony. But I'm also aware, I think I'm probably a bit more sensitive to this than I realize, because I'll go into a board meeting or I'll go into a restaurant and I'll know the place to sit. I'll know the place that's got the most energy. So I think I've got a bit of a sensor for that, but also thinking about sacred spaces and the places that just lift your heart. And, those places that we need to visit because they just lift us up. But that's not the question you asked me.
But it's fascinating.
We're all just now bouncing. But the question you asked me was, what symptoms do you notice? Well, fatigue is probably the biggest one, depression, aches and pains, all those things, just people feeling low because the energy is either low or conflicted, and relationship issues. So, but inflammation, anxiety, all those kinds of things start me thinking, well, what's going on in the space? And I'm meeting more and more people with chemical sensitivities, and sometimes multiple chemical sensitivities, and people with electrical sensitivities
who are feeling bombarded, because the other unfortunate thing in the modern day is I might turn my Wi-Fi off, but there might be, 4 or 5 other Wi-Fis that are actually coming into my space. So, that's a whole group. But what do you think, Gina?
Well, I'll just add about the geopathic stress. I did a consultation for someone in Scotland who, when they contacted me, they were partway through fertility treatment, and she was at, I don't know what the window of time is, but she was partway in. So I go to the house and I douse, and I find 2 lines crossing on her womb. So to me, and she'd had one unsuccessful attempt, I thought, well, this is not going to work. So I cleared that, but it was not enough then. We're too late already to help her with that particular process. But she did have another process, and she did actually conceive. And she, contacted me and so was thrilled to have had a successful pregnancy. So it does relate, you have general conditions, but it can relate to something specific, on the head, and a headache that turns into something worse. So yeah, geopathic stress. And also about the offices, I was going to say, sometimes there is a seat where that's a high turnover of staff, or they're often ill. And that's where the worst of the geopathic stress is. And also in terms of, you talked about, going into a restaurant or a space, it's important when we choose somewhere to sit that we have protection, and we choose a power place. So if you're in control of a meeting, you're not going to sit with your back to the door. You're going to sit so that you have the biggest view, that you're in control of the space, protected by a wall or something like a high chair. You can see the flow, and then you invite people in, and you're in control of that space, or you feel safe and protected. You never really want, often you go in a restaurant, and I go out with Feng Shui colleagues, and we go, not this table, not that table, we want that table. We don't want the traffic going in and out the kitchen, but this is intuitive. Who wants to sit and have the door flapping all the time?
The reason I'm laughing, Gina, is because my children and my partner think I'm a nightmare. Because
Absolutely,
we'll go into restaurants and I'll just, reorganize the whole restaurant.
Yeah, you have to sit where you feel comfortable.
And I'm always wanting to be with my back against the wall looking out. So I think that safety control thing is a biggie for me. But I think, if we blend this into the nature principle, the thing about where you plant a tree or where you grow your vegetables, this is as we get more sensitive. And I think this is not for the few. I think this is for the many, because I think we have this sense. We just are not developing it or listening to it. So what I love about what you're saying is, let's all start awakening to that intuitive sense we have of the energy in our space. And I think it's very important what you said about the working from home. I now work from home, and I work long and hard and many hours. And I think that probably is very dominant in the space for my loved ones. So I think I need to think consciously about how to create a boundary. Have you got any suggestions if people are working from home as to how to create that boundary?
Well, the temptation when you work from home is just to work. And there isn't a factory bell going, time to go home. There hasn't been for a long time. So I think the first boundary is time, is to say between 9 and 12, I'm working and I'm recording, don't come near me. This is my space. And then I do 3 hours in the evening, or I do 4 hours in the afternoon. But, you've got parameters. And if you can, rather than be on call, as we can easily be with a phone and an iPad and a computer and looking at emails at 10:30 at night, which is not great, is say, I'm going to work till 7, I'm going to work till 4, and then I'm cooking a meal, and then I'm off duty. It's clearer than having your computer in the kitchen and working at something while you're doing something else. So that's a skill, creating that time boundary. And then if you can, especially now, I'm of the old school where I have a lot of paper, copies of this, copies of that, and in files. But, modern working, and especially with the AI support, you don't need a lot of stuff. You really need the, 1 or 2 screens, a notebook, and potentially your iPhone, and you can be tight in a space. You don't need a whole load of files. And then you create a working space, and then when it's finished, and the cloth goes over it. computer gets closed and it doesn't look like a workspace. You're not looking at your work. You're not looking at the things that are undone, because that's the stress that goes over into social and relaxing time. And then you can create your boundaries with family and say, I'm working here and now, or today I need to be flexible because I've got all sorts of things happening. And then after that, you draw that line, it becomes a home again. Or you have a shower, you change the your relationship with the electromagnetic field, water changes that. You have a shower, you change clothes. I mean, since a child, I've changed for dinner often, wear something different in the evening. So little signals to yourself and everybody else that that's finished. And now we're in family time, social time, relaxed time, or whatever it is,
While we've been traveling, Rosy, my husband and I, when we finish work, we'd always go for a walk. And that signified computers down, because while we were traveling, it's always been on the dining room table. So we finish, computers down, boots on. I mean, it helps that we've got our little Lily and she is telling us it's walk time. But we go out into nature, into the forest and walk until we feel that it's closed. So that's our bridge from this is work time into home time. But I really love the things about like turning the phone off. You can set a time for when your phone goes silent. So after 8 o'clock, I can't be disturbed. I don't get any notifications. It's really helped me, particularly on that wind down to sleep. Because if I'm still looking at computers at 9 o'clock at night, there's no way I'm going to sleep till about 2 a.m. It's still going on. I think I absorb that energy.
Yeah, well, my doctor colleagues call it sleep hygiene.
That's exactly what it is.
I want to draw you back, Gina, to you mentioned, I think, about having an ancestors corner or an elders corner, because I think that on the downside, we can be lugging history around us. My parents had a beautiful big old house, but they died young. And me and my brothers and sisters had all these meetings in car parks with vans and furniture, just lugging this stuff around till we had homes that were big enough to put it in. But I just became very aware that actually it's an inability to let go of the past, isn't it? When we're hanging on to old stuff. But then on the other side of the story, how beautiful that you are saying you have an elders corner where you can honor and connect consciously with your elders.
Well, you can connect anything anywhere. And there is also what's called a bagua, which you can look up online and see that there are kind of 9 aspects of life equated with 9 areas of the home, orientated in most traditions from the door. So if the door was at 6 o'clock, your elders corner is at 9 a.m. That's just one simple thing for that corner. But, speaking to this stuff, clutter is a nightmare in Feng Shui, and isn't it easy to have too much stuff? I can't believe I see what's for sale. And I think, do people really need all this stuff? I've got too much stuff. Life goes through phases. And when you do have an elder who passes away and you have the home to get rid of, it's quite traumatic. The work involved in getting rid of things, deciding what to keep. And I've done consultations with people where I've said, what, are you a curator of a museum for the family? Or are you going to let this go? This is your home. You can't have your garage full of another generation's stuff. And you can actually walk into places like IKEA, and in one afternoon, the whole house is furnished. You can buy all that. Couldn't do that before. So do you want to keep the old stuff? Has it got value? What's the most precious? So you have to make those decisions of what you can keep. I've got lace tablecloths from decades and decades ago. I have a black jacket that I tried to throw out recently in a clutter clearing process. And in the 70s, when I bought it as a student, it was a 1940s jacket, so it's 30 years old. Now it's 80 years old. I've still got the jacket. So I've got an 80-year-old jacket now. I was impressed when it was 30. And I wanted to throw it out. My friend said, that's really great. An original
no. We need people to support us when we're letting things go.
Well, I've got a little story on that one, Gina. A friend of mine lost a jacket that her father had given her through a dry cleaner, and it was lost. And anyway, she grieved it. And 3 years later, she walked into a charity shop near to her home, and she said, I'm looking for a black jacket to go with a particular pair of trousers. And the lady said, I think I've got one upstairs. Went upstairs, brought down her jacket.
It found its way back to her.
And of course, she burst into tears, and she said, "That's my jacket that my dad gave me when I was 18." The jacket had found its way back to her.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, we can keep precious old things, but not everything. Just can't. And I think one of the, I have to say it to myself. I did a video on years ago on YouTube for clearing clutter, and I thought, what would I tell myself? I did it for myself. What would I tell myself? So I came up with like 3 golden rules, and then I'm doing this, and then I went off and I cleared 250 books out the library, and I came back, my hair was all mussed, and I did a PS. I've just cleared all these books. So, I kind of have to coach myself. Do I really need this? Will I use it? And what helps in clutter clearing is, where am I going? Who am I now? Who am I becoming? And does this person who I am now or who I want to be, do they need that? And that's, and if they do, then you keep it. And if you love it, if you think, really, do I really need that? No, it has to go, because we're always becoming and we're moving forward.
I found it harder to get rid of my mum's stuff and my grandma's stuff, which I ended up with, than my own stuff. And I would say never do it alone. Always do it with a supportive person. Somebody like Gina who's going to go, no, you don't need that anymore. That's not who you are. Because if you've got somebody like your friend going, oh no, that jacket is so lovely, he can easily snap back into, oh, I better keep it then. But what I did when I got rid of my mum's stuff is I've kept 1 china cup and saucer. And I think in my new home in Scotland, when I want to connect with my mum and my grandma, I'm going to make a lovely cup of tea and slice of cake and use that cup. And then I will be with them like I'm having, afternoon tea with them. But the thing that motivated us when we left our home was we'd cleared my mum's house, we'd cleared my husband's parents' house as well, and we had had enough. And I didn't want my children to have to go through that, because we were really conscious when we cleared things. We weren't just, actually about 3 months in, I was like, I wish I'd just got a big skip and put it into the skip, but I couldn't consciously do that. So you're sorting it. What's going to charity? What are we going to sell? Where is it going to go? Not just put it in landfill. That's so important, I think, when you're clearing things. It does make you feel good if you take time to do it.
Absolutely. But I think the last thing just to think about is presence, as of in the presence of other beings in your home. And the most lovely version of that, when I went to Japan, was the way that they'd have an ancestors, like a little altar with photographs, and same in Greece, so that they would, and sometimes it had a little cupboard and it could be opened, so that there was a connection to the ancestors, devotional, loving, respectful, honoring. And Mr. Mokichi Okada, the teacher of the Jo-Rei group, described it as us having spiritual cords to our ancestors. But then, that those are desirable presences. But then, do you have to sometimes deal with undesirable presences or difficult presences in places, Gina?
That's not so frequent that somebody feels that there's something very disturbing in the house, because then they would feel very uncomfortable. And again, really calling in a professional who knows how to work at that level of sensing the energy of something. In your own home, I suppose the most empowering thing to do is to bless it, to have this sacred spot. I mean, in the healthy home, the retreat house that I now have, that I, worked on for the last 30 years, put so much love into it. And even when concrete floors were done, there were coins in there were jewels, crystals, intention, love was put in literally to everywhere. So often people will come there and sense that there's no need for an altar or a sacred corner, because the whole thing is vibrating at that level, because it was put with such love and intention in there. You can actually feel it when I've run retreats there. it's me in the house welcoming people because the energy is so strong. So in your own home, having a corner, a space where it's just a corner of beauty. I often go for a walk, come back with a stone or, an acorn or something. I place it there. I've got a card for the day, maybe. I've got a candle I light. I could have family pictures. You can have whatever you like. I could have an image of something I'm moving towards, but it's like a small vortex of goodness. And the more you amplify that, and you're like, bless this house, which is a common phrase that everybody knows, bless this house. If there's anything here that's not serving me, I let it go. I ask you to leave. You can work by yourself at that level of just, you can't necessarily sense it, or maybe you can. You just, please leave. If something pursues and is challenging, then, you call in the expert.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I used to know the most delightful ghostbuster called Eddie, who was called into Coots Bank to clear an energy of a spirit there. And the difference was that Eddie wasn't frightened, and he would make connection and actually ask for a loving relative or a being that had made that transition to come and take through their dad or their uncle or their brother. So love is, as in all other domains that we've talked about, is the key, isn't it? And that, of course, is what creates that precious feeling of home, isn't it? When we I love that phrase you just use, amplify the love. And I think things like I'm sitting at a round table. For me, a round table is the symbol of connection of the family around a table to eat. So I'm just so full of ideas now, Gina, and feeling, particularly for me, the thing about that boundary between the work and the home. I'm really going to take that one on board. So bless your beautiful heart. Thank you so, so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Gina. That was just so, so rich. And I'm taking the elders' corner away, and I've got a table arriving very soon that's made of Sheffield steel. So I've got a little bit of my hometown in the Scottish Highlands. I'm really looking forward to connecting with that.
That's lovely. I think people should start with one room, one corner. Don't take on the whole house. Just one space, and just sit. I often just sit and look out the window, and I'm just, how do I feel? And how is the space? And just have time. And, back in the day at 11 o'clock, there was the 11s. I don't know whether people still have 11s. 11 o'clock, I'll sit down and I'll go, this is my space, my time, in my chair, which is an invitation. It's sitting there. And I can just pay attention to my home and just check in. And that's it. And then that's how I felt I needed to change the art, just by tuning in. And everybody can do that. Everybody.
Wonderful. So wonderful. Thank you so much. Amazing. What a great episode. Lots of love.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Alive and Loving It. We really hope that today's conversation has sparked your passion and showed you ways to open up into the vibrant life that's possible for you.
Absolutely, Rosy. I mean, we do have to remember that transformation begins with love, and that is self-love, love for others, and love for our beautiful planet. When you embrace love and you just allow yourself to receive as much as you give, you unlock the fullest potential of your life.
That is the truth, Karen. And we're here to support you every step of the way on your journey. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, please join our community and check out our trainings and our services, such as my Dr. Rosy Daniel Clinic and Karen's beautiful women's circles and retreats, and the events where we can all go deeper together. And do please send us your feedback. We want to hear your ideas for the podcast, who you'd like us to interview, and the questions you want us to ask and get answered. Through the contact page on our website, just go to aliveandlovingit.org.
I've really enjoyed reading them. But when you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter and updates. And what about following us on Instagram as well? We are at Alive and Loving It Community. Once you've signed up to the newsletter, you'll receive extra notes from today's show and more inspiration to help you live your most vibrant life.
Thank you for being with us. Keep shining, stay true to yourself, and remember, This is your time to live your fullest, healthiest life.
So until next time, keep doing what you love most in life. I know Rosy and I will be. We're so excited to connect with you on the next episode of Alive and Loving It. And we welcome you with open hearts to our Alive and Loving It community.